In order to defeat kaiju that are powerful enough to destroy a city, you need soldiers that have far surpassed the human limits. So today, I'm gonna discuss 7 Defense Force soldiers that can go toe-to-toe with the strongest kaiju. Isao Shinomiya, who was once known as the strongest human soldier in the Defense Force. From his first appearance, Isao was shown to be a very serious man. He's so serious that you won't be able to catch him smiling even once. Isao only cared about results, and it wasn't just his subordinates. Isao even had the same attitude towards his daughter, Kikoru. Instead of praising his daughter for acing her middle school entrance exams, Isao told little Kikoru that instead of being obsessed with a single success, she should start working towards her next goal. However, Isao wasn't always ruthless. He was actually quite a clumsy father and used to spoil Kikoru a lot. But everything changed when his wife Hikari died while fighting Kaiju No. 6. You see, while Isao spoiled Kikoru with lots of love, Hikari acted as a strict Asian mom for her. But after her death, Isao decided to take Hikari's place and started acting cold towards Kikoru. He wanted Kikoru to become the perfect soldier so that she wouldn't have to face the same fate as her mother. And Isao wasn't just a serious old dude who sits in his office all day and is only good at bossing the hell out of his subordinates. Instead, he was a wise man who gave orders while keeping in mind the threats they would have to face in the near future. As the Director General of the Defense Force, the only thing that mattered to Isao was the safety of his country, and he would do anything to protect it from kaiju. I mean, he even decided to use a living kaiju to counter the future threats. Now, that was Isao as a Director General, which makes one wonder how powerful the strongest soldier of the past is. Well, to give you an idea, every officer in the Defense Force learns the squadron-style combat technique. And the guy who perfected this technique was none other than Isao Shinomiya. Isao would use this combat technique with his numbers weapon 2. And yes, it is the same numbers weapon that was created from the corpse of Kaiju No. 2, which almost wiped out Sapporo City in 1972. Not only was Isao able to wield his weapon, but he was able to use all the attacks that Kaiju No. 2 used to cause destruction on Sapporo. First is the Sonic Blast. Instead of just sticking to close-range fights, Isao would often produce Sonic Blasts to expand the range of his strikes. These Sonic Blasts were strong enough to send Berserk Kaiju No. 8 into the air. Numbers Weapon 2 also lets you shoot Energy Blasts. These Energy Blasts pack highly destructive power and can also shock their opponent. Let's talk about the attack that almost destroyed Sapporo City. To use that attack, Isao has to release the full power of Numbers Weapon 2, which might sound cool on paper, but believe me, it has a big drawback. Doing a full release puts a lot of pressure on the user and shortens their lifespan, but the power you get in return is insane. It basically turns you into a Daikaiju, which is a kaiju that has a fortitude level of more than 8. With this power, Isao was able to use the main attack of Kaiju No. 2 times in a row, which almost destroyed Kaiju No. 9, but it was not enough to eliminate it. Over time, Isao had grown weak. He wasn't able to defeat the old age, which is why, despite releasing every ounce of his power, Isao couldn't destroy the core of Kaiju No. 9. This gave No. 9 enough time to not only regenerate its whole body, but also absorb Isao Shinomiya along with Numbers Weapon 2. And all of that happened in front of Isao's student, Gen Narumi, which is our next strongest soldier on the list. Seeing Isao get absorbed by No. 9 angered Narumi. He immediately started attacking Kaiju No. 9, but even with the help of Kafka Hibino, Gen Narumi wasn't able to stop Kaiju No. 9 from escaping. Now, this wasn't enough to throw Narumi into depression, but it did make him sad, and we had no idea Narumi had this side to him, since Narumi was shown to only care about 2 things: gaming on his console and overwhelming skill from his subordinates. While the gaming did remain the same for the most part, Narumi started paying more attention to his soldiers and gave extra attention to Kikoru. After Isao's death, he gave Kikoru Shinomiya 1 month to surpass all the platoon leaders of the 1st Division. To give you an idea of how difficult this task is, every 1st Division platoon leader is talented enough to become a captain, which means Kikoru had to defeat 3 potential captains in 1 month. I know it sounds harsh, but if you want to reach the level of a captain, then you have to trust the training of the strongest anti-kaiju combatant of Japan. This title is not just for show, because Narumi not only defeated No. 9's clone in a few moments, but was also able to fight with number 9's main body alongside Kafka after it absorbed Kaiju number 2's powers. If number 9 didn't catch them off guard by shooting the injured members of the defense force, there's no way it would have been able to escape its otherwise certain death. It's mentioned in Kaiju number 8 B-side that despite not wearing any combat suit in his life, Narumi's unleashed combat power was 24%, which after years of training peaked at 98%. At that power, Narumi sliced through Kaiju number 11's limbs just like you're supposed to slice a steak. Now that wouldn't have been possible without his numbers weapon because Narumi is a different kind of beast after he uses numbers weapon 1, which is the oldest numbers weapon created from the retina of Kaiju number 1. Kaiju number 1 was known for its pseudo-future sight. I say pseudo because Kaiju number 1 couldn't actually predict or see the future. What it actually did see was the signals the brain sent to a body part, which allowed Kaiju number 1 to predict movements of living beings before it actually moved. And while this looks like a cheat code, it has a small problem. This weapon can only predict the movements of living beings, and this created a big problem for Narumi when he was fighting Kaiju number 11, because Kaiju number 11 fought using water, and because, water is not a living thing, Narumi couldn't predict any attack number 11 threw at him. So what did Narumi do? He evolved his numbers weapon 1, to the point that not only did Narumi become able to see the movement of electrons, but he could also sense changes in temperature, and accurately learn every detail of a location with the help of his eyes. Using that information, Narumi can predict every single thing with the help of a clear mental image. In English, it basically means that Narumi became able to see the future. Combine that with Narumi's cracked speed and reflexes, and you get a kaiju killing machine that can not only solo Kaiju number 11, but can also hold his own against the Moreiki Daikaiju, whose fortitude level was so high that the defense force wasn't able to measure it. Let me mention real quick that Narumi fought the Kaiju number 11 at full release of his combat power for more than 15 minutes, which is actually bad because if you continue to push yourselves after that point, your brain will start to overheat because of constant stress. If the user doesn't stop there and continues to fight, then their brain gets cooked. However, Narumi didn't care about that and started aura farming while fighting the final boss of the story. Despite knowing the risks, Narumi went beyond his limits in his fight against the Moreiki Daikaiju. He fought alongside Soshiro Hoshina and continued using his numbers weapon to get as much information as he can from the kaiju. This was the result of the training Narumi received from Isao, and because Isao passed on his responsibilities, it was Narumi's job to train the next generation. And in order to find out how good Narumi did his job, let's move on to number 3, where we have Kikoru Shinomiya. Kikoru is shown to be a prideful girl who looks down on people and humiliates them if she thinks they're inferior to her. Now, that is a bad thing, and you should never do that, but considering how she's one of the 2 most talented newbies in the defense force, we can let that slide, because on her very first try, Kikoru released 46% power of her combat suit, which not only is the highest ever for a rookie, but it also puts her on the same class as a platoon leader. To give you an idea of how strong this makes her, Kikoru was able to solo a group of Yoju and Hanju as if she was smashing mosquitoes. However, you won't get far with just talent. You will eventually hit a wall that can only be conquered when you combine your talent with lots of hard work. Kikoru also hit a similar wall in chapter 53, and it made her completely helpless in front of the monster who killed her father. She wasn't even able to scratch Kaiju number 9, which made Kikoru realize how weak she truly was. Which is why, in order to become strong, she trained under Narumi, who taught her everything he learned from Isao. Thanks to that, Kikoru became able to release 84% of her suit's power while wearing Numbers Weapon 4. Numbers Weapon 4 is the fastest numbers weapon in the defense force, which allows its user to fly long distances at insane speeds. This allowed Kikoru to dodge most of the attacks of Kaiju number 15. I say most because Kaiju number 15 was faster than Kikoru and even caught up to Kikoru multiple times. It was only after Kikoru released 88% of her suit's power that she was able to outclass number 15 in the battle of speed. And at 94% release, Kikoru became so strong that she was able to expose the core of Kaiju number 15, which should eventually ended the battle right there, except Kaiju number 15 had one last card. Turns out that Kaiju number 15 can mentally control its opponents. By hitting Kikoru with an energy beam, number 15 read Kikoru's memories and used it to create illusions of her tragic childhood. Number 15 told Kikoru that everything she has done up until this point is useless, which makes sense because, you see, whatever Kikoru did so far was so that she can earn the praise of her parents. And because both of her parents died, number 15 told Kikoru that she has lost the reason to fight, so she should quietly give up. This convinced Kikoru for a moment, and she almost gave up the fight. It was only when she heard Kafka's voice that Kikoru was able to regain her senses. Kafka told Kikoru that he believed in her, which made her realize that after joining the defense force, she no longer cared about earning her parents' praise. Instead, she wanted to be a teammate that her friends and teacher could be proud of. Because of that reality check, Kikoru overcame the brainwashing of Kaiju number 15 and crushed its core in no time. There is one more thing that makes Kikoru completely different from the rest of the Defense Force officers, and that is her insane compatibility with different numbers weapons. Not only is Kikoru highly compatible with numbers weapon 4, but she can also wear numbers weapon 1, 2, and 7 without any issue. Kikoru took it as an opportunity and decided to learn numbers weapon 1 to use it as a trump card against Kaiju number 9. But why numbers weapon 1? Because one cool thing about numbers weapon 1 is that all of its eyes share the same vision, which means that Kikoru saw everything Narumi experienced during his fight against Kaiju number 9, which had now become the Mureki Daikaiju. While Kafka was keeping the Mureki Daikaiju busy, Kikoru used numbers weapons to find its core. I know it looks like a simple task, but it isn't, because Mureki Daikaiju contains countless kaiju cores inside his body. However, with the information Marino gathered, Kikoru not only located the core, but she did so while tanking the attacks of the Mureki Daikaiju, making it easy for Kafka to land a final hit at its core. Number 4, where we have Reno Ichikawa. This most talented officer could only release 8% of his suit's power on the first try, which is actually the second lowest out of all the candidates. However, despite having a lower release than the rest of his teammates, Soshiro Hoshina believed that, just like Kikoru Shinomiya, Reno Ichikawa had the potential to become the captain of a division. But how can someone with such rookie numbers become a captain? Well, that's because Reno showed insane growth during his time in the defense force. It's so insane that Toko, an officer of the 4th Division, mentioned that Reno far surpasses Kikoru in terms of improvement because of his abnormal growth rate. In just 2 months, Reno became able to release 18% of his suit's power. In Chapter 5, Kikoru wasn't able to dodge Kaiju number 9's bullet at 48% of her suit's power, but Reno proved to everyone that it's not the plane, it's the pilot, and dodged number 9's extremely fast attacks at 18% power. In order to prepare themselves against Kaiju number 9, the defense force wanted to have multiple factors that would catch number 9 off guard. To do that, Mina Ashiro, captain of the 3rd Division, suggested training a suitable candidate for numbers weapon 6. Numbers weapon 6 was made from the corpse of Kaiju number 6, who was once known as the King of Kaiju, and was the reason behind the death of more than 200 Defense Force officers. The Defense Force was eventually able to defeat it and make a weapon out of its corpse, but because no one in the Defense Force was compatible with it, this weapon remained in the cold storage for 10 whole years. However, in Chapter 58, Soshiro Hoshina informed everyone that Reno Ichikawa shows signs of syncing with numbers weapon 6, but you can judge compatibility on the basis of signs, which is why when Reno first tried weapon 6, he immediately lost his consciousness and was sent to the clinic. Now, just because Reno failed once doesn't mean he isn't worthy of this weapon, because after his first failed attempt, Reno was given a month to train with this weapon, and in that 1 month, Reno became able to wear numbers weapon 6 without waking up in the clinic. Along with that, Reno also managed to use the powers of weapon 6, but to officially use it, Reno had to kill a Hanju, which had a fortitude level of 6.4. This wasn't a simple task. During the mission, Reno completely went out of control and ended up fracturing his leg. Things got so bad that he was about to fail this mission when Haru suddenly came in clutch. He not only gave Reno a piggyback ride, but also helped him eliminate the Hanju, allowing Reno to become the official user of Numbers Weapon 6. Weapon 6 is an extremely powerful numbers weapon, which grants its user the ability to create and control ice. This ability is so broken that Reno not only one-shotted 2 Yoju, but also froze Hanju's leg in his second trial. I know this doesn't sound that impressive, since a Yoju and Hanju aren't as strong as compared to Daikaiju or Identified Kaiju, but you have to remember that it was his second run with the weapon. Let me mention that after getting more familiar with the Weapon 6, Reno became so good with Weapon 6 that he instantly froze a whole group of Daikaiju in one single attack. Now, both Reno and Kikoru were recruited by the 3rd Division, who completed their initial training and first mission under the command of an officer who we have at number 5, Soshiro Hoshina. Soshiro comes from the famous clan of swordsmen from the Muromachi period, who were known for slaying kaiju way before the defense force used to be a thing. While everyone in the defense force has switched to use modern weapons like rifles and cannons, Soshiro Hoshina sticks to his roots and uses his custom-made twin blades to slice down the kaiju population. Now, slicing down kaiju sounds cool and all, but there is a small problem. Soshiro's combat power for sharpshooting is very low, which means that, unlike his captain, Soshiro is not good at slaying giant kaiju. But that's not a problem for Hoshina, because when it comes to small to mid-sized kaiju, Soshiro is even better than Gen Narumi. He not only overwhelmed Kaiju number 8 with his superhuman speed, but almost defeated Kaiju number 10 when it had a fortitude level of 8.3. Now, just like all the previous officers we discussed, Soshiro also gets a numbers weapon. However, just like Soshiro, his numbers weapon is built differently from the rest of the kaiju weapons. You see, all the numbers weapons we have discussed so far have one thing in common. They don't have a consciousness of their own. They're just tools which can be used however the user wants. But numbers weapon 10, calling it a tool would be disrespect, because you don't use it, it uses you. For weapon 10, you are its tool and it can move the way it wants. Along with a combat suit, numbers weapon 10 also has a long mechanical tail. This annoying tail caused many problems for Soshiro in the beginning, because both of them would often move in the opposite direction. However, after accepting weapon 10's stubborn nature, Soshiro was able to get it in sync with his weapon and gave us one of the best fights in Kaiju number 8. In chapter 56, we find out that Kaiju number 10 was a prototype created by Kaiju number 9, and the reason number 10 wanted to become a numbers weapon was so that it can fight the finished product created by number 9, and that finished product was none other than Kaiju number 12. This fight put Soshiro on the edge right from the beginning, because not only was Kaiju number 12 better than Soshiro in dual wielding, it also surpassed him in speed and strength. Despite having a numbers weapon and releasing 83% of his suit's power, Soshiro just couldn't keep up with Kaiju number 12 and instead got dominated by his opponent throughout the first half of the fight. It was only after Soshiro shifted to single blade style that he started slicing Kaiju number 12. Soshiro began to overwhelm number 12 with his extremely fast sword slashes. But unlike Kaiju number 10, number 12 was good at adapting during the fight. After trading a few blows, number 12 got used to Soshiro's single blade style. And if that wasn't enough, it also mocked Soshiro's entire life by copying his single blade style and doing it better than Soshiro. However, Soshiro didn't want to give up. He would accept defeat in anything except a sword fight, which is why, despite getting mopped by Kaiju number 12, Soshiro gathered his strength and decided to have some fun. He unleashed 100% of his suit's power, which is the highest unleashed combat power ever recorded, and slashed right through his opponent's chest. And because that wasn't enough to defeat number 12, Soshiro decided to use 3 swords style. However, instead of putting the sword in his mouth like Zoro, Soshiro let weapon 10 take hold of the sword. Up until this point, Soshiro's dual blade style could only launch an 8-hit attack. However, adding another blade allowed him to unleash 12 hits at Kaiju number 12. But even that wasn't enough to defeat Kaiju number 12, because it blocked the last attack with its tail. Now, Soshiro predicted that number 12 would block this attack, which is why he detached the tail from his suit. This allowed weapon 10 to go behind Kaiju number 12 to stab its core. And it doesn't end here, because after defeating Kaiju number 12, Soshino had to team up with Narumi to fight the Moreiki Daikaiju. Soshiro wasn't just fighting Moreiki Daikaiju, he was fighting it while being inside Narumi's domain. let me explain why that is insane. When a captain is fighting at a full release, their power rivals that of a Daikaiju, which is why true members that have a release force of 60% or below are prohibited from entering that area. And when Narumi is fighting at full strength, there's not a single defense force soldier who can survive within 100 meters of him. But Soshiro Hoshina not only survived in Narumi's domain, but also used his skills without any problem. Now, it's about time I tell you a little fun fact. Soshiro's father and other higher-ups of the defense force told him not to join the defense force since he cannot do anything with a pair of swords in the modern era. However, the captain of the 3rd Division was the first person to tell Soshiro that his skills are needed in the 3rd Division. And guess what? This captain is the only defense force member on the list who doesn't need a numbers weapon to become a powerhouse. So let's move on to number 6, where we have Mina Ashiro. If Soshiro cooks small to mid-sized kaiju, then Mina is the GOAT at dealing with giant kaiju. She does it with the help of larger kaiju weapons, not to be confused with numbers weapon, because the weapons Mina and the rest of the defense force use is made from parts of regular kaiju, while numbers weapons, on the other hand, are made from the body parts of an identified kaiju. And using big kaiju weapons doesn't make things easier for you. In order to use these weapons properly, you have to draw out every drop of its power, because otherwise the output won't be strong enough to damage the kaiju, let alone kill it. Now, Mina is the only soldier in the whole world who can use these weapons at their full power. Keiji Itami, the current Director General of Defense Force, mentioned that if Mina was an active soldier during the Kaiju No. 6 attack, the death toll would have been only a third of what it actually was. In Chapter 29, after Kaiju No. 10 powered up and became a giant-sized kaiju, its fortitude level rose to 9. It also overpowered Soshiro and was able to crush him like a bug when Mina pulled a surprise attack on it and completely blew away its left arm. And you know what mothers say to their children who are scared of kaiju? Rest assured, we'll be fine, because this city has Mina Ashiro. If you still don't believe me, then let me remind you what Isao said about her. Isao called her the missing link that had completely changed the kaiju hunt, because Mina was the only officer who one-shotted an identified kaiju. The only person to come close to one-shot an identified kaiju is the soldier we'll discuss in a minute. What other proof do we need for Mina's supremacy when the villain of the manga, Kaiju No. 9 itself, praised Mina's strength and called her the entity that holds the most destructive power in the defense force? It considered Mina an important piece and wanted to absorb her like Isao to grow stronger. Mina uses two kinds of weapons to kill kaiju. First is her cannon, which allows her to kill identified kaiju with just a few rounds. And it has to kill a kaiju in those few rounds because Mina can only load up to 5 rounds at a time. The second weapon is anti-giant class kaiju railgun. This beast of a weapon here allows Mina to instantly kill a Daikaiju from 20 kilometers. For my American audience out there, that's about 12.5 miles. This basically makes Mina an expert sniper of Kaiju No. 8, and a sniper needs two things: a place to shoot from and stability. She achieves this stability with the help of her pet Bako. Bako is a monster who failed to become a kaiju and took the form of a tiger. The reason Mina decided to pet this failed kaiju is very much related to her love for cats, but despite being a failure, Bako would do anything to help Mina. Bako allows Mina to find stable footing and is strong enough to withstand the insane recoil of a cannon. He is also fast enough to dodge attacks from Kaiju No. 10 and can also carry Mina to different places. One interesting thing about Bako is that despite being a failed kaiju, he is able to regenerate his body parts just like any other kaiju. He's also a very smart boy. Bako was able to snap Mina out of No. 9's hypnosis. Moreover, he also went against Mina's orders and kept attacking Kaiju No. 9, even though Mina told her to hide. Now, Bako was the one who helped Mina against No. 9's mind control, but the one that truly saved Mina from getting absorbed by No. 9 was none other than our boy, who is not only the strongest Defense Force member, but also one of the strongest kaiju. At number 7, we have Kafka Hibino. Kafka is quite different from the rest of the Defense Force members, and while he looks like a normal person on the outside, he's actually a kaiju on the inside. And he's not any random kaiju. He is the Kaiju No. 8, which has the highest recorded fortitude level of 9.8. How he became such a monster is also very interesting. One night, he was resting in a hospital after getting injured in the kaiju attack, when a mysterious flying larva appeared right in front of him and quickly entered his mouth. This incident happened the very night he overcame his fear of failing the entrance test of the Defense Force multiple times and decided to give it one last try. Now, because he could transform back into into his human form, Kafka was able to get into the defense force. However, the fact that he was a kaiju was only known to 2 officers of the defense force. The first one being Reno Ichikawa, who was there when Kafka first transformed into Kaiju number 8. The second officer to know this secret is Kikoru Shinomiya, which is a little unexpected since she's the daughter of the very person whose whole life revolved around killing kaiju. Things were going pretty good for Kafka. Not only did he become a general officer, but his extensive knowledge about kaiju made it easy for the 3rd Division to eliminate the monsters. But right when everything was going smooth for Kafka, his identity as a kaiju got exposed right in front of the 3rd Division. In Chapter 31, after getting defeated by the 3rd Division, Kaiju number 10 launched its final attack and created a huge Yoju bomb, which, if exploded, would have completely wiped out the 3rd Division. So in order to save everyone, Kafka transformed into a kaiju and kicked the bomb high up in the air. This gave everyone enough time to fully activate their shields, which ended up saving every single member of the 3rd Division. However, this also led to Kafka being captured by his own friend Mina. Now, obviously, Kafka was about to get killed. However, there was one way out of this situation. If Kafka somehow proved that he's human, then he might be able to escape his death. But it wasn't an easy task by any means, because guess what Isao did right after he met Kafka? He shot him multiple times and started punching him to death without saying hello. This threatened the mysterious larva living inside Kafka's body, and because parasites hate losing their hosts, it caused Kafka to go berserk in his kaiju form. He started dominating Isao Shinomiya and eventually overpowered him to the point that Isao was just one punch away from meeting the Angel of Death. But just when he was about to punch Isao, Kafka gained control over his body, and he did something unexpected. Instead of punching Isao, he punched his own chest and told Isao that he's not a kaiju. But we all know that's not true. A quick X-ray scan of Kafka's body revealed that he had a core in place of his heart, which basically means that he's a kaiju, and that means he should be eliminated, but Isao had other plans. He wanted to use the powers of Kaiju number 8 to counter the future threats of kaiju, and I think it's time I tell you about those powers. So remember the 9.8 fortitude level I told you about earlier? Well, that's no joke. In his kaiju form, one punch is all Kafka needs to either kill a Hanju or critically injure an identified kaiju. Along with that, Kafka almost ended the manga in chapter 18 when he hit Kaiju number 9 so hard that its core got completely exposed. One more punch and it would have been the death of number 9. However, that would have been a boring manga, so the author decided to disturb Kaiju number 8 with 2 Defense Force members, which gave number 9 enough time to escape its death. And as if that wasn't enough, Kafka's fortitude level reached new heights after going through metamorphosis. To understand this, we need to first understand the mysterious larva. Back in the Moreiki period, the Kaiju Slayers would fuse their bodies to tools with the help of a parasitic kaiju. Now, this method was very ineffective. It took a huge toll on the user, and while it helped them in defeating normal kaiju, it did nothing when their opponent was a Dai Kaiju of the Moreiki era, because that monster slaughtered hundreds of Kaiju Slayers and destroyed everything. The collective regret and anger of dead soldiers who couldn't save anything gathered around a single dying soldier who looked like Kafka. This caused his heart to convert into a core, which later resulted in the creation of the mysterious larva. And in order to unlock the full potential of this mysterious larva, Kafka had to deepen his connection with the larva. But if Kafka chose to do that, he would never be able to return to his human form. This sounds like a difficult choice, but for Kafka, I believe it was quite easy, because just like the people whose consciousness created the mysterious larva, Kafka wasn't able to save Isao. He was also helpless against that kaiju attack that killed Mina's cat, his home, and his gaming console. He wasn't able to save places he held close to his heart, which is precisely why he was prepared to leave his humanity and become a kaiju for the rest of his life. His fortitude level became so high that the defense force wasn't able to measure it. The same also happened when they tried to measure the fortitude level of Kaiju number 9 and the Moreiki Dai Kaiju. After this transformation, Kafka became a nightmare for Moreiki Dai Kaiju. He tanked a full power punch from the Moreiki Dai Kaiju, and the only thing the punch did was give Kafka a little nosebleed. But what Kafka did in return was straight disrespect. He pointed to a faraway building and told the Mariki Daikaiju that they should fight there. What came after was a powerful punch that sent the Mariki Daikaiju flying towards that building. Now, power isn't all Kaiju number 8 has, because he can also change his body parts into different objects. He can turn them into small jets to increase the speed and power of his punches, or he can turn any part of his body into a jaw to stop sword attacks. The regeneration of Kaiju number 8 is also very different. Along with regenerating some body parts here and there, like Kaiju normally do, Kafka can instantly regrow his whole body after removing the core from the previous body. Not only does Kafka have a broken regeneration, but it can also disturb the regeneration of Kaiju number 9. It also has a Kaiju sense, which works somewhat similar to the Spidey sense. Thanks to this ability, Kafka can sense if a Kaiju will appear near him. He can also tell what type of Kaiju it is. However, to do that, Kafka must face that Kaiju beforehand. But what if I tell you that despite having all these abilities, Kafka would have gotten killed by the defense force? I mean, yeah, sure, he would have killed Isao, but what about Narumi? What about the rest of the defense force? It's only because of his strong, indomitable will that Kafka remained a soldier in the defense force. Because not only did his strong will help Kafka to regain control after he went berserk, but he was also able to handle the 400-year-old hatred of the fallen samurai.